Good day, everyone. Um, Welcome to today's session. We are going to wait a couple more minutes to let people enter the session. And while we wait, to those who have already signed in, please feel welcome to write on the chat to share your name and where you're connecting from. It's always very nice to see where people are based watching us. Okay, I think we can start and with yeah. So good day everyone. Welcome to today's All Atlantic Connect webinar organized under the Oceano Coordination and Support Action, which supports the All Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance, or ORIA. My name is Tanya Lee Shan, and it's a pleasure to have you all with us today. I'm going to share my presentation here. Okay, before I hope you see my, okay. Yes, okay. Before we begin, again, I'd like to invite everyone joining us to introduce yourselves in the chat. Please share your name and where you're connecting from. You are also very welcome to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A panel. We'll make sure to address them during the discussion. So before giving the floor to our guests, I would like to give a brief introduction to Aoria and how we are building this all-Atlantic community. Through these All-Atlantic Connect webinars, we aim to strengthen connections across the Atlantic Ocean, bringing together scientists, policymakers, youth, and communities to share experiences, ideas, and inspiration around our shared ocean goals. But
Sorry,
Aoria,
Tanya.
yes?
Sorry. I just wanted to flag, I'm seeing your presenter view, not your actual slides.
Ah, thank you. Is this good now? I hope so.
Yes,
Thank
I think
you.
so.
Thank you, Stacy. So Aoria represents much more than a framework for scientific collaboration. It builds on more than a decade of science diplomacy. It all began in 2011, where the European Union adopted the Atlantic Strategy. And then in 2013, Galway Statement established collaboration between Europe, Canada, and the United States. In 2015, we saw the creation of the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, followed by the Blaine Statement, signed in 2017, which expanded cooperation to include the Global South, Brazil and South Africa. And then more recently, in 2022, the All-Atlantic Research Innovation Alliance Declaration was signed, and we had Argentina, Cape Verde, and Morocco joining the alliance. Along these milestones, the All-Atlantic community is reinforced through the Atlantic Fora. We already had about 10, I believe, but here I mention only the last 3, during which we officially celebrated the joining of more countries to our area, continuing to build this strong foundation. As you see in this map, today the Alliance brings together 13 countries, member countries, forming a growing community dedicated to advancing a shared vision for a sustainable Atlantic Ocean. Through Aoria, we are building an all-Atlantic community grounded in common interests, mutual learning, and co-creation. And together we are developing collaborative projects, workshops, data sharing platforms, which align with the priorities set in the All-Atlantic Declaration, the one that was signed in 2022. And currently, Aoria is working towards the priorities set in that declaration, focusing on 2 action areas. At Oceano, we are proud to lead Action Area 1 on coastal resilience, focusing on understanding the relationship between ocean and climate and how this knowledge can help strengthen the resilience of coastal communities. And then we have Action Area 2 on ocean observing and modeling, and this is led by NOAA and aims to coordinate Atlantic Ocean observing and modeling capacities. We are now looking ahead to our Atlantic Ocean. We are now looking ahead to the All Atlantic Forum to be held in Brazil in 2026. And here I'm showing a visual created during the All Atlantic Forum in Brussels held this past September, which nicely illustrates this discussion in that session on results and future action, working towards the two action areas, the ones that I mentioned, coastal resilience and ocean modeling. It also highlights how Oceano is supporting our area through supporting governance, engagement, and communication, as well as organization of the annual fora. As I said, the next Atlantic Forum will take place in April 2026, and this will be in Brazil, in Salvador, Bahia. Until then, we will have several events and initiatives to help us build momentum, including this All Atlantic Connect webinar series organized in collaboration with Oceans20 Brazil and Ocean20 South Africa. And with that, I'd like to play a welcome video from our partner, Alexandre Turra, coordinator of Oceans20 Brazil, who will share his reflections to open today's session. And let's see if I can. Okay, I hope everyone is listening.
Friends of the Ocean, welcome to our webinar promoted by the Oceano Coordination Support Action in partnership with Oceans20, with reflections from Brazil's past presidency and South Africa's current leadership of G20. We are delighted to have you with us today to discuss vital issues impacting our oceans and, by extension, the future of the planet. The O20, which emerged during the last G20 cycles in Indonesia and India, plays a key role in giving civil society a voice in ocean discussions. By bringing together non-governmental organizations, private initiatives, indigenous peoples, traditional communities, and scientists, O20 strengthens the presence of the ocean on global agendas. The formal creation of Oceans20, the civil society engagement group on oceans, by the Brazilian presidency at the G20, represents a historic milestone, recognizing the central role of the oceans in the global climate, energy, and environment agendas. The oceans are interconnected, but they are also diverse in their characteristics, and this plurality needs to be considered in our discussions and recommendations for action. In Brazil, the Ocean Agenda was one of the 4 pillars of the Working Group on Climate and Environmental Sustainability, coordinated by the Brazilian Ministry of the Environment, and was intertwined with other working groups reflecting the transversal nature of this topic. O20 was coordinated by the UNESCO Chair for Ocean Sustainability at the University of São Paulo, in collaboration with the World Economic Forum, the UN Global Compact, the Brazilian Biodiversity Fund, FUNBIO, and the National Institute for Ocean Research, INPO. In 2025, South Africa is leading O20, and the United States of America will come next in sustaining and strengthening this process. Oceano supports the All-Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance, AORIA, which connects researchers and institutions across the Atlantic Ocean, fostering the creation of an all-Atlantic community, promoting the exchange of knowledge and experiences, essential for for the conservation and sustainable management of the Atlantic Ocean. In this All Atlantic Connect webinar series, we bring together experts from different areas of knowledge to share insights and foster a deep dialogue on the importance of the ocean in our lives, emphasizing the urgent need for collective action to elaborate the Oceans 20 recommendations through global cooperation under the leadership of South Africa. Get ready for a session rich in learning and exchanging ideas. Feel free to participate with questions and comments throughout the event.
Thank you very much, Tuha. And so today we will focus on governance and policy coherence, exploring how effective and inclusive governance is central to empowering coastal communities and ensuring that ocean policies translate into meaningful, long-term impact across the Atlantic. I'm delighted to be joined by two experts whose work spans governance, law, policy, and community impact. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first guest, Leticia Grimet. She's a scholar and practitioner, lecturer, and qualified admitted attorney with a passion for economic development, international trade, and the environment. She is currently lecturing maritime commercial law and international trade, as well as researching maritime policy issues. As a research expert at South African International Maritime Institute, she works on topical maritime issues. She is particularly interested in the legal and policy implications of climate change on ocean governance. Thank you very much, Leticia, for accepting our invitation to participate in this webinar. I'll give you the floor, but I'll share your slide first. Here. Oops. I think it's not right. Just give me a minute. Okay. Is this good? No.
It needs to be a little bit bigger.
I think you're in presenter view again, Tanya.
Okay.
And there's also some weird gray blocks that are appearing on the screen, which is very strange.
I think that's better. I can see now. Thank you so much, Tanya.
That's whatever you're doing, closing is the gray box are disappearing.
Okay, good. So now it's good.
There's still a few more. I don't know if you've got other things open.
No,
Yeah, just
I
on
had
the
the
side
command.
and just above, so it might impact on reading. But I'll continue and we'll see how it goes going forward.
It's looking
Well,
better.
thank you, Tanya. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. As Tanya said, I'm Dr. Leticia Grimet, and I'll be speaking on ocean governance and policy, specifically Theme 5, Strengthening Inclusive and Adaptive Ocean Governance. Next slide. The preamble to Theme 5 states, achieving sustainable ocean outcomes requires robust governance structures that prioritize transparency, inclusivity, and active public engagement in decision-making processes across levels of government. By integrating diverse knowledge systems and practices and empowering stakeholders, we can ensure that ocean policies are fair, effective, and widely supportive. Building capacity, particularly in developing nations. This is where now we have that little gray patch. Ensuring is effects okay in ensuring equitable contributions to sustainable management of ocean resources. Well, before I go on, I just wanted to actually speak into this building. No, can we go back to the slide? Thank you. Alright, okay. So building capacity or capacity building in developing nations is critical and key because we have found that within ocean governance, law without the ability to implement is actually a waste of resources, given the process which we take towards ocean governance legislation and ocean governance procedures, or even sustainable management of ocean resources. So when we're looking at building capacity, we're not looking at just one level of capacity, but within the developing country context, we have technological capacity, we have resource capacity, we're looking at governance capacity, financial capacity, knowledge capacity building. So it's understanding that the work that needs to be done is very far and varied. And then I think that also from this, what is critical and key to understand is that we are moving beyond the normal stakeholder engagement priorities to include civil society and academia, understanding the role which civil society and academia play in ocean governance, and what happens when you do not have civil society and academia involved in ocean governance processes, procedures, or even the creation of legislation. I'll give some examples. Um, I'll speak from a KZN, KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa context, because I've done quite a bit of research within KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. The one example we found was with Ismangaliso, a World Heritage Site. At that time, we were researching coastal marine tourism and looking at community engagement or the role which communities played in the governance of Ismangaliso Wetland Park. Ismangaliso management pointed out that there was a high level of poaching, illegal fishing from the communities. And when you spoke to the communities, they said that they were not involved in the actual processes. The park was very separate from them. They almost felt like they were pushed out. In addition, the land was taken without consultation. And this led to a lot of negative sentiment against the park. The other complaint came from the park rangers who said that when it came to the management of fisheries, especially when you're looking at spawning or where you're looking at diminishing fishery stocks, where they had to restrict fishing or actually prohibit fishing within certain areas, the communities refused to respond or actually work with them. And so they would have illegal fishing at night. The only way they were able to deal with this issue was then going to the communities, involving the communities within governance networks. And our legislation was actually changed to ensure that when it came to parklands,
Leticia? We are not hearing you.
It looks like she's dropped off. Maybe there's an issue with her connection.
No. Oh, yeah. So I think we could wait another minute and oh, there she is.
hi, I'm back.
Hi.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to close my camera because there's connectivity issues. I hope you don't
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
Hopefully that will help with the internet. We're having a storm brewing, and unfortunately, when we have storms, it affects internet capacity. So I think I was still saying that the only way Ismangolisa was able to deal with its issues was by including tribal leaders in governance structures. That was the one area. And then within the Eastern Cape, we had, I don't know if anyone's heard of the Shell case, but we had a community taking Shell to court This was partly because of lack of community involvement, where the same fishing community, the small-scale fishing community, found that the sonar blasts were impacting on their fishing. At that time, there was no real legislation against sonar within territorial waters or near small-scale fishing communities. And this fishing community was able to provide testimony of how the sonar blast was actually impacting on fisheries. That was one of the first cases where we actually had such detailed testimony, which that actually led to the change in South African legislation. So community doesn't only involve seeking permissions, but it also brings proof and of impacts of commercial impacts on fisheries, and also provides data. So this is critical and this is key. We can go on to the next slide. Thank you. I'm going to have to rush. Okay, so ocean governance collaboration initiatives in the G20 context are in their infancy, and any commentary on the work of Brazil and South Africa, as well as future host nations, must consider this. I think this is also critical for today's work. While the Law of the Sea Convention speaks into national and international ocean governance obligations, climate change impacts, automation, and the increased recognition of marginalized groups through the UN SDGs calls for escalation in international collaboration. Ocean governance provides direction on current and future regional integration initiatives. And this presentation focuses on the ground that's been broken and the work that is still required going forward. Next slide. We're going to need to be able to remove that little thing there. Okay, so I'm looking specifically at theme 5, which is strengthening inclusive and adaptive ocean governance. This is one of the 10 themes that came out of the Brazilian O2 2024 presidency, which was then chosen out of 100 possible themes. You'll see that in theme 5, we have got 6 themes, of which 4 speak directly into community involvement. That's A, B, D, and E. F speaks into standardized ocean accounting. That would be the global ocean accounting framework or the various global ocean accounting frameworks. And then you have the adaptive governance on maritime security, where we begin to understand the role of maritime security, and with increased automation of ships, the threats to maritime security. This goes beyond the normal IMO legislation on SOLAS or pollution relating to ocean governance impacts of the maritime industry. Okay, so theme 5 recognizes that while communities involvement is important, it's necessary to educate communities. This education is critical because you're dealing with multiple and diverse communities within the whole of Africa, within South America. And each one of these communities has a different view of the ocean. Coming back to the South African context, as much as your communities will fish, you have your small-scale fisheries, there's also the understanding within our communities that fishing, that the ocean is sacred because that's where the ancestors dwell. So when you're dealing with ocean policy, there's a place where you're going to have to bypass any practices which the communities could view as being as desecrating the oceans or negatively impacting on their beliefs. Now, each community has its own beliefs, so you have multiple community engagements and understanding the diverse approaches of these various communities to not only ocean governance, but to the oceans and to the stewardship of the oceans, because there is a traditional understanding of stewardship. This is where we're also looking at your indigenous knowledge systems that come into ocean governance. So how then do we take from these communities in terms of understanding knowledge, protecting them, and at the same time, then also empowering them through upgrading of knowledge systems? This is where it becomes a little bit sensitive because you are dealing with a lot of sensitive issues. Okay, let's go into the next slide. Okay, no, the next South African position. Okay, so what South Africa has done is has built on the Brazilian position by where Brazil brought in your 10 key themes. South Africa has got 5 principles which can then be applied to ocean governance. I've only included the 4 because they speak directly into ocean governance. Your 5th one is then legacy. But if you're looking at your themes, once again, you can actually, if you go back to the previous slide, I mean, we can't do that now, but if you think about what we looked at before, inclusivity, that is increasing your stakeholder base, bringing in academia, bringing in your civil society. So by expanding your stakeholder base, you have transdisciplinary perspectives and partnerships that also bring about equitable solutions to ocean challenges. Then practicality, the basis is that every intervention must be measurable. This is critical and this is key because if you're unable to audit interventions, it's not only a waste of time but a waste of resources. And ultimately, it's like throwing money into the ocean and you cannot actually pick it up. So the next then is sustainability. While in some countries, especially in the developed nations, there's already an understanding that in the environmental or incorporation of environmental goals into economic projects is key in enhancing outcomes, your GDP outcomes. Within certain developing countries, inclusion of environmental principles or is seen negatively. And so there's a place where we have to understand that sustainable development, especially within the development context, the sustainability is key and that environment is not something that adds to your costs. But by incorporating environmental principles and an environmental mindset into what you're doing, you may actually be um, not only increasing the long-term sustainability of products, but also increasing your profit margins. And then collaboration, encouraging partnerships, and responsibility among stakeholders. Going forward,
Leticia,
yeah,
maybe I'm going to stop sharing and see whether I have something in the background so that I close the windows and maybe fix this problem.
I
I'm
already
sorry.
can.
Let me see.
Sorry.
Let's see.
That's much, much better. Okay, we just need to go to let's present a view and then if you can show the slides.
Is good now?
Perfect. That's perfect. Can we see the next slide, please? And then relevance to future regional interaction. It's one slide back. Thank you. So we have within ocean governance already a very strong foundation in the law of the sea and the various IMO conventions and treaties. However, with climate change impacts and automation threats to shipping, like cybersecurity and cyber piracy, these have highlighted the gaps in existing legislation and global undertakings. And I think also with the multiplier effect in climate change impacts, we're seeing that sometimes governance and economic challenges, governance is taking as much is not catching up as fast. So there's the room between action and legislation is well, okay, there is increasing. Okay, climate change impacts on weather patterns, the Arctic Circle, the marine living resources, ocean currents, etc., involve more than business and governments. Once again, communities and vulnerable groups are more generally silent victims, need to understand ocean governance concepts and the ability to inform policy through GOAP, the Global Ocean Accounting Partnership, and emerging social accounts. Can we go on to the next slide? I'll speak into them. So amongst the nations in the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, countries and communities are at different levels, with unequal access to resources, scientific knowledge, processes, risks, and scientific tools. So communities are holders of knowledge, and vulnerable societies, while the academic community is essential for the measurements of climate impacts, ocean changes, determination of environmental, social, and economic impacts, as well as providing the data and direction necessary for ocean governance initiatives. So the inclusion of these two different stakeholders is necessary. The one for understanding impacts, because the communities live right at the ocean. So science and communities work hand in hand in understanding what's happening to the to the ocean. So this is also a very key partnership. And then the work done by South Africa and Brazil provides a framework for interaction and collaboration. It's not the end of what needs to be done, it's just the beginning of the work, although it is very, very critical for governance. Because on the one hand, you have your themes, and the other one, you having your principles. So the next G20 presidency, which is the America, is then able to build upon this. We can go to the conclusion. Thank you. So, at a time when so much is uncertain and research data has the potential to change how the ocean is governed, determine the direction to be taken, clear legal principles for engagement at multiple levels helps provide the certainty required for managing uncertainty. And for me, this is the role of governance. It gives you a foundation upon which you can work. And it governs all partnerships, it governs interactions. It almost forms not just the foundation, but also a holding, I wouldn't say a holding cell, but almost the walls around all work that has to be done so that there is, in the face of chaos, there is a voice of certainty and reason. And this is what is really, really critical. So this certainty is essential within a multicultural, multidisciplinary context, as it ensures that there is a foundation that can influence and hold change. While South Africa and Brazil have provided much needed direction, each country has its own unique perspective to bring to rapidly changing dynamics and also their own unique challenges. And it's in each country dealing with their challenges and overcoming these challenges that we also have a world that is then brought to the process of ocean governance and ocean governance research. These unique inputs will ultimately result in a holistic approach to ocean governance and research collaborations within the region and the Alliance. Thank you so much. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Leticia. Thank you very much for this presentation, and sincere apologies for the inconvenience of the layout. Before we go to the next presentation, I would like to remind the audience that you can add your questions at the Q&A panel. So now let's shift from governance to policy. It's now my pleasure to introduce our second guest, Stacey Webb. She leads the Marine and Coastal Impact programs at the Sustainable Seas Trust in South Africa. She's a scientist and conservationist. She brings research, education, and community action together to tackle marine litter and strengthen coastal resilience. Through the Sustainable Seas Trust flagship initiative, Operation Clean Spot, she focuses on turning evidence into impact, helping build a future where Africa's people and seas thrive side by side. Thank you, Stacey, for accepting our invitation to be at this webinar. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. And it's good to see some familiar comments, names and comments in the chat. So I'm going to be talking about theme 7. Tanya, just to check, can you see my presentation in presenter format?
Yes,
or in normal
yes,
format?
all perfect.
Oh, good. Great. So I'm joining you today from Gqeberha in South Africa, and I'm going to be talking about theme 7 and some of the ways that theme 7 is actually being translated into on-the-ground practical implementation. So just a little bit about us. SST is a small organization at the bottom of Africa where you can see the little star. And our reach is quite large due to continental partnerships, continent-wide partnerships. We work with different government conventions, research institutions, and community groups across Africa. And our work is guided by one principle, and that's Africa First, meaning African solutions designed with African contexts in mind. That's a very important part of our work. So we all know the ocean doesn't recognize borders or regulations or sectors or institutions. It moves freely across all of those things. So our governance has to do the same. And theme 7 essentially calls for policies that are coherent, integrated, and shaped through inclusive multi-stakeholder collaboration. And all of that has to align with global commitments. For us, that really boils down to reducing fragmentation. So it means making sure that policy, science, finance, and communities don't sit in parallel universes, but operate as one connected system. And coherence only becomes real when it shows up in people's lived experience, whether you're a policymaker, a fisher, a scientist, if you're producing evidence, or in a coastal community just managing day-to-day realities. And today I'm going to share 3 practical examples of how this coherence is really becoming tangible in the work of many organizations across the world. So a treaty or an ocean policy is only as strong as its ability to measure the change reliably. So Africa has an advantage here. We've spent years building Africa-ready monitoring systems that don't require expensive technology and refine the methods into coherent methods that can be compared across different contexts. So with various partners and the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, we co-created the African Litter Monitoring Manual, and this was tested across 7 countries in the Western Indian Ocean region, but it has been used in multiple countries across Africa. And the methods contain litter monitoring methods for everything from beaches to mangroves to streets. It's practical, it's standardized, it's low cost, and it's already being widely used. So it provides an easy tool for anybody to use to do monitoring that is able to be comparable between countries. And you can freely download the monitoring manual and our impact report on the program that actually developed the manual off of our website. So essentially what this program has given us is what theme 7 calls for, which is comparable data that can feed directly into national action plans, regional action plans, and global reporting. The second way coherence is really becoming real is through governance integration. So we worked really hard to build systems where information and action move smoothly. So having international policy linking with national and city action plans, and then local implementers, and then back up again through the community generated data. And this two-way flow ensures that global frameworks are actually implemented because there's tangible actions you can implement, and that local realities and the data that's collected locally in communities can inform policy revisions. And that's what theme 7 essentially looks like in practice. And if you'd like to have a look at our Plastic-Free Seas guidebook, it essentially tells you how you can develop your own national and city and regional action plans based on policies that are currently in negotiation and treaties that are in negotiation. So feel free to download this and have a look. It's got a lot of resources, and if you need anything, please feel free to contact us. Okay, and then my third and final example is really where coherence is becoming a lived experience. So we have developed a program called Operation Clean Spot, and basically what it does is it brings households, informal collectors, schools, buyback centers, and recyclers into one circular system. And we look at the waste flow and we improve the waste flow from source to the recycler and into end-use products. And in this way, we're able to reduce leakage. It also makes recovery economically meaningful and creates cleaner and safer community spaces. Crucially, all of the monitoring and all of the interventions are community-based, community-led, community-owned, and the monitoring itself uses the same standardized citizen science methods that we've developed via the African Litter Monitoring Manual. So it's comparable, which builds the feedback loop back into policy and planning from on-the-ground community actions. So just a little bit of an overview of how Oceans 20 looked in Brazil and how South Africa is taking it forward, essentially. So Brazil set a really strong foundation during its presidency. It talked about equity and science policy bridges and global ocean agenda centered on people. And our contribution as South Africa essentially is to take that forward by building the operational layer. So turning the amazing work that was done in Brazil and turning that policy into ocean actions and practical initiatives that strengthen climate resilience, evidence systems, and regional partnerships that can all help to implement what we would like to see. So under South Africa's presidency, the Ocean 20 framework is designed essentially for implementation. We're focusing on low-cost monitoring and innovation, public-private philanthropic partnerships, alignment with all of the global commitments from SDGs to Ocean Decade to GBF, BBNJ, all of the global commitments, and then strengthening African leadership in this space, especially early career ocean professionals. So there's a complete holistic, innovative approach to how the implementation is being looked at. So in short, South Africa is building directly on Brazil's direction, but adding implementation and measurability and inclusivity. So essentially, we want coherence to be felt in the communities and reflected in governance and strengthened through science. And it's a chance to demonstrate what African-led cooperation can deliver to the global ocean agenda. So it's a very exciting opportunity. And with that, I'm going to leave you with some QR codes. You're more than welcome to download any of the tools I've mentioned and get in touch if you'd like any free resources. We do provide all of our resources for free. And if you're looking to start or scale monitoring or community-based work, you don't have to reinvent anything. Get in touch and we can give you real-world case studies and examples of how you can do that. Thanks, Tanya. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Stacey. Thanks for this very nice presentation. And thank you both for mentioning what South Africa is doing and comparing to the Oceans Brazil Communiqué. So while we wait for the audience to put some questions in the Q&A, I'll get the discussion started. So my first question is going to be for Leticia. So Leticia, you highlighted community education as a key to strengthening inclusive and adaptive governance, and you gave an example of how where communities' voices were being taken into account in governance. But regarding education, how do you think that this can be achieved in practice? You know, for what types of education or capacity building do you think it's more successful in empowering communities to participate?
Thank you so much, Tanya. Well, at the government level, there's many, many tools. We've had online training where we make communities aware of the oceans, of the role of the oceans. there was also places where we got funding, we took legislation, we unpacked legislation to the communities, and we empowered the communities through the legislation by giving them resources. We gave them training, so they were able to then take what was open or given to them within the legislation and then apply it. So it's a multifaceted approach, all the way from online training to underground classroom training to certification.
Mm-hmm.
Then that really has assisted. But the most important thing is that communities do not feel like they are being dictated to, that they are actually part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Leticia. Yes, I think it's really we often say talk about stakeholder engagement, and it's a these are keywords that are hot a hot topic, but it's very very important, like you had mentioned. So now to Stacy, um, and still under the on the community's involvement level topic. So Stacy, based on your experience with the Operation Clean Spot, um, do you feel that communities are recognizing more clearly that their efforts can contribute to policy change, and how this influence their engagement?
Thanks, Tanya. With Operation Clean Spot, we're very deliberate about closing the loop. So we make sure that we communicate with them that they're not just picking up waste. The data that they record, we feed into international databases. And we also feed back to them when their data has been incorporated into any reports or policy discussions or business decisions. I think that feedback loop is very important because then they do start realizing it's not just a talking point or us trying to make it sound amazing, but that it's actually in real time being useful and the data is being useful. And um, I think that communities are starting to recognize their role, and those communities who have had the penny drop, essentially, that they are finally recognizing their role, everything changes in their attitude towards the work that they do, and that's really amazing. In our Operation Clean Spot program, for example, some of the data has actually fed into things like placements of new bins or litter traps. And adjustments to collection routes of recyclers, and conversations with brands and municipalities, and supporting schools with equipment and things like that. So the fact that they are collecting the data, they're showing the work that they're doing, is bringing more people and more stakeholders on board to support. And that recognition really deepens the engagement. So they're really moving from volunteering once off to asking, what are we doing next with this data? Who else needs to see it? And so you really get ownership, not just participation. And that's really what you need. It really shifts the tone from victimhood to agency. Like now they really are no longer experiencing the consequences of poor waste systems. They're able to shape the response. They're able to help their communities. And it's empowering. And I think that's the whole point of programs that are like this.
That's really nice. That's really nice. And it's a snowball, right? Because like when a group of people feel empowered and feel that they are important, their voices and actions are important, then they bring more people and keeps growing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's really nice. So and with you, Stacy, and like you said, the Operation Clean Spot operates across Africa in some countries. So what similarities and difference do you see in coastal policy challenges across Africa regions?
So just to be clear, Operation Clean Spot program it's being trialed and tested in South Africa. It was trialed and tested in 2 municipalities, and now it's being rolled out to 3 different cities. So it's still being tested locally, but the idea is that the design principles would spread into Africa. A lot of our work around policy and training, like we have training programs to help equip people who are in the waste management sector or possibly going to treaty negotiations and things with the knowledge they need to be able to have those conversations. So that's where our international reach is really more around training and support. At the moment, Operation Clean Spot will be moving out as soon as the design principles are established and tested. But in terms of policies and policy challenges across Africa, we essentially see some common issues. There's structural gaps, so there's under-resourced municipalities and infrastructure backlogs. We also see like fragmented mandates between departments, so there's confusion about whose job is what. And then limited enforcement is a real issue. I mean, if you've got any policies, you've got any laws, you've got to have enforcement, and that's a huge issue. And then all the leakage points across the different countries look very similar. So you've got informal settlements that don't have collection. And you have markets and rivers as transport routes for waste. So there's a lot of similarities. There's also data and coordination gaps, which is pretty much across Africa. So many countries still lack the comparable long-term data sets. And that's what we're trying to do with the citizen science is really promote the fact that you as a citizen can contribute to those data gaps. And it's a really low cost way of getting information in Africa. So that's why our focus is so much on encouraging citizen science. And then in terms of the policies across Africa, there's a lot of sort of regulatory differences. So some countries, very few have things like EPR regulations, and then some have plastic bans, and then some have national marine litter plans, and some are still in the discussion stage. But what I think is that with the INC and with the treaty negotiations, countries in Africa are really becoming more active in that space. They are starting to develop their own action plans. There's regional action plans. There's a push from the Abidjan Convention, Nairobi Convention to develop regional approaches to waste and to plastic waste in particular. So I think there's a lot of drivers that are pushing us towards coherency and towards continental frameworks and things like that. But we've got a long way to go. But as a world, we have a long way to go as well. It's not just Africa. So, yeah.
And the important thing, I think the most important thing is that it's going.
Yes, it's moving in the right direction. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So I'm making these questions, but then Stacy or Leticia, you feel free to add insights or comments if you wish. You're muted, Leticia.
Thank you, Tanya. I was just going to add that when the communities feel, I think the biggest issue is trust, is creating the trust with the communities. Because many times you'll find from a government point of view, researchers will go into communities as a tick box exercise, and what they say doesn't really go any further. But when they realize that you actually are committed to the outcomes and that their voice does matter, and on the other hand, that what you're the information that they're giving you will not be misused, because there's also the element of protecting what the communities are giving you, because there is that knowledge which they have to protect. When you have established that rapport and they know that there is trust involved, then they are much more receptive. The other one is then when they see how the changes you are bringing positively impact on them, then they get excited about the outcomes and they want to be part of it. It's just not about us speaking and doing nothing. Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that is that a lot of these communities have had one-hit wonder programs. So an organization goes in, runs a program for a month or two, and then leaves, and then the whole thing collapses. And so, like Letitia was saying, you need to build this rapport and this trust, and then you need to build sustainability and ownership in the community, because when you leave, it can't just fall apart again. That community needs that long-term sustainability built into their programs.
Yeah, so that they can see that what they are doing is not as something that is a one-time impact. It's something that it's longer. Thank you. So now I have a question for Leticia. You mentioned the Global Ocean Accounts partnership. So what is this partnership doing to enhance equity in ocean governance? For example, ensuring coastal and small-scale fishing communities benefit from ocean resources and are not sidelined in blue economy plans.
All right, okay. Thank you so much, Tanya. Well, I'm part of the social accounting working group. We're still in our infancy, but there's the whole understanding that we have to have social accounting, and we are moving away from the economic concept where the only way we measure wealth and we measure gains is economic GDP. So as we create the principles for measurements, we'll find that it's a lot. I think we'll be able to actually bring more value and measure outcomes for your communities. At this level, it's about what is how does governance impact on your communities? Is it negative or positive? What is climate change doing to the communities? And being able to establish ways in which you can assist those communities. So as we're going forward and we have a more measurable way or a more standardized way of determining social accounting, we'll see that we'll be able to have a more equitable balance. It's not just economic accounting, but also your social accounting.
Hmm. Thank you. And although it is in its infancy, is there a country that's a little bit more um, ahead in this ocean accounting um, exercise, I guess?
Oh, there's actually quite a few. We got pilot countries, of which within the Atlantic, South Africa, okay, Mozambique on the other side is more IORA, but then you have Morocco, you have obviously your developing economies, UK, but then if you're looking at Brazil, Argentina, you also have some of your Caribbean countries or your island states that are part of the original pilot countries.
Okay,
So
nice.
we're very, very much in the infancy, but we're getting there.
Yeah, like just what we were saying a while ago, that it's important just to start it to go in the right direction. Okay, thank you, Leticia. And now back to Stacy. Um, you've taken local pilot projects and expanded them into regional policy influencing initiatives. What have you learned about scaling community-driven solutions into broader policy frameworks?
So I think communication is key. It's absolutely essential that the community is on board, that they're all collecting data in a comparable way, and simplifying data collection. It doesn't have to be hugely scientific, but it just needs, so basically looking at what you want to say in terms of policy or what you want to inform in terms of policy and asking the simplest way to get that data or to collect that data. And so we've done a lot of simplification of scientific methods at a community level so that you are able to create credible data, but it's not overwhelming for community members to collect that information. And policymakers also love a story. So it's not just about the data, it's also about the impact. So like Letitia was saying, is that the accounting side of things needs to take into account other things in the community that are being changed and growing. So when community actions produce both standardized data sets and a good story, you suddenly have them becoming part of a policy engine and motivating policy change. So that's important. And communicating that back to the community drives more change. And then partnerships really matter. It's if you don't bring municipalities, PROs, youth groups, NGOs, researchers, anybody working in the community members, churches, schools, if you don't bring those people on board with you or have them have a say in the process right from the start, it's going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
So you really, and scaling, it doesn't really become about scaling the project itself. It becomes about reinventing the design principles to fit the community context because every community is different. So yes, you have this idea of how this project should work, but within each community, there's slight nuances. So making sure you've done your research, you've engaged with all the stakeholders, you understand what you're walking into, you have them on board, and you co-design whatever the change is going to be within the community. So partnership is very important. Yeah, I think those are the most important two.
And
Can
you
I add to
yeah.
that? Oh, sorry. Just there was a project that was done in Mozambique where they wanted to empower women within the community. What research had shown was that as much as the women are allowed to sell the fish within the community, they were not allowed to fish. But this is something that people didn't realize was a cultural thing. So the women would prostitute themselves to the fishermen to get the fish and then go and sell. So government wanted to break the cycle of prostitution because it was disempowering to the women. So I think this is where social accounting comes in. You know, you're dealing with, okay, empowering in a different way. So government went into the community. They gave the women fishing rods because they said, okay, we're going to teach these women how to fish. The men took the fishing rods. The question was then, what, why? And then only afterwards they realized that the women are not culturally are not allowed to fish. So the intervention should have been actually understanding what the women's traditional role was, and then empowering women within their role while finding ways to bypass the demeaning aspects or the prostitution aspect. So how would we deal with the prostitution? That would mean changing the community's mindsets about the role of women fishing. Maybe in some communities you find instead of women fishing, they will go and collect the what's it, the crabs or the collect the mussels and stuff and then sell that. So that enables them to bypass the prostitution elements. So the problem with social accounting is that equity is measured very differently. You are changing the role of women. You're changing the role of communities. You're dealing with youth. Are youth able to uh, are they able to find jobs, or are youth being able to get training? How do they fit into is the standard of living elevated? Is the standard of women elevated? Now, this is where it's not necessarily a GDP thing, although ultimately it translates into GDP. But you want to know that women are no longer prostituting themselves at the end of the day. So I think this is why social accounting is so important. It's very difficult to measure in a sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leticia. And it's really important what we are discussing because we are touching a lot of different aspects that makes a process that we think that's sort of straightforward, that we need to communicate with the community, we need to engage people, different sectors, different groups, but then we also have to take into account different cultures. But then also within the same country there's differences in culture within the same country and the way municipalities work. So um, it's very challenging. It's very interesting, but also, yeah, very challenging. And thank you for mentioning all of these different aspects. Um, so I think we have a very shy audience. Um, I do you, so again, thank you, Leticia and Stacy, for this wonderful discussion and insights. I don't know if you have any other comments or insights you want to share before we close the session. No? Okay.
No, just to say, don't be shy. If you have a question, you have 2 more minutes while Tanya closes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. So let's give another couple of minutes to our audience. But so yeah, we will just to say that we will have another session within this webinar series. It's going to be next week, December 11th. Please, everyone, follow our social media to so as soon as we disseminate the registration link, you see it. But next session will be on cooperation, which I think is a good ending to the series because in all different topics we need to cooperate um, among ourselves. So yes, Leticia.
I was just to say that when we're dealing with the concept of partnerships, something we always overlook is that you need to have partners on the same level. And when you're dealing with your traditional communities, very often they feel that they don't really have much to bring to the table, although they do. And so if you're dealing with negotiation with communities, from a business perspective, we've always seen business as being more important than civil society or even academia. So you had to level the playing field in terms of how you what's the word? You sit your table so that when everyone comes to the table, that they feel that they are all equally heard. And at the moment, the communities don't really feel that. Even though we give them a room at the table, what they say is it's almost like once again it's a tick box, or they feel it's a tick box. They is always overpowered by the voice of business because it's the one who holds the purse who actually has a bigger say. So once we renegotiate the balance, you're talking about equity, once we begin to rethink how we see wealth, then maybe we'll be able to listen to communities a lot more and implement what they are saying.
Being
Thank you.
humble, or knowing that, or accepting that we all can learn or have things to learn from everyone.
There's indigenous knowledge in every community that's, that need to be considered.
It's true. Thank you. Thank you for this last insight, Leticia. Okay, so I think I'll close this session. Thank you again for really nice presentations and discussion.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Have
Thank
a
you,
lovely
Stacey.
day further. Thank you, Letitia.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you. Bye.
And
Bye.
thank you to the
Bye.
audience for
Yeah, thank
joining
you,
us.
audience. Bye-bye.
Bye.